Welcome everyone back to another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son George. I was my mother's caregiver after she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, she passed on 1/1/2020, but we started together for Sharon.com in her memory. We've had the opportunity to speak to some incredible people, but today's guest is someone who not just inspires me, but I feel is going to be the future of awareness. And she'll take my role, I hope. And she just has such an incredible background. So I just want to welcome you, Arianna, and I'll let you do some of the background because I won't be able to justify it as beautifully as you will. So again, such an honor to have you here, and I'm so excited to share your journey and your grandfather's with the world.
Well, my name is Arianna Spurlin, and I'm currently Miss Pennsylvania's teen. But I fight for Parkinson's disease because my grandfather has had it for 13 years, which means I haven't really known a life without it being in my life. I started Unshakeable PD, which raises awareness for Parkinson's, and it also helps raise money to go back to finding a cure for Parkinson's and getting a Pennsylvania chapter started of the American Parkinson's Disease Association. Because I think it's really important that Parkinson's patients know that they are not alone. They have a community behind them at all times, and it's important for everyone to know what it is.
I appreciate it, and it's just incredible because I know you might be younger in teens, but you're doing something that really is adult-like and changing the world for so many. So thank you. Can you tell us a little bit maybe about how you got into the whole world of, pageants? And I actually interviewed someone who, I don't know if you know, but she actually is also a pageant holder. And if you have time after, if anyone out there looks at interviews at togetherforsharon.com, you'll be able to look at hers up. So it's really interesting to see different perspectives. But maybe you could tell us how, what got you into the world of pageants and things.
I never really thought of myself as someone who would do pageants. I was a dancer my whole life. And in 2021, my dance studio said to me, "You're going to do pageants." And I was like, "No way, that's not happening." But they actually signed me up for my first pageant and was like, "Go for it, girl. Like, go get what you got to go get." And I was like, "Okay." And when they asked me what I wanted to fight for, what I wanted my cause to be, there was no question in my brain that I wanted it to be Parkinson's disease because I know that not many people hear about it, and I wanted to be the face and the story that they could see behind what the disease was.
Thanks. Yeah, it's very important. I mean, the only reason I do this is along with you is for awareness. I think if we have more individuals aware, we'll be closer to a cure. So thank you for that. Shifting a little to the world of Parkinson's, it's amazing that you have a platform that you can reach so many. I had the great opportunity. I'm from New York originally. I'm in Florida, but I visited Hershey Park factory. So that was, yeah, that was about the only time I was in Pennsylvania, but it's a beautiful state, and using the platform that you're doing, I think you're going to do some incredible things. I hope you don't forget me though when you're famous. So thanks. If you don't mind, I'm going to just now share the PowerPoint of you, and we have so much to get to. Hope we reach it all. Hopefully, are you able to see that? I
Yes,
think you might recognize this young lady. And this is you. So I wanted to just kind of go through. This is one of the most amazing memories. I bet maybe you could talk about this moment.
it was amazing. I will never forget, I was on stage, and right after I was crowned, I walked up to my girls, and I was like, "What just happened?" I was like, Did this like, pinch me? Am I awake?" And I still, like, in a fever dream from that day. I still can't believe that it happened, but I'm so thankful that it did.
How does it work now that you are Miss Teen? Is there a certain amount of time and then you move up? Or I'm the novice. I might have a lot of background in other areas, but not in pageantry. So maybe you could just tell all our listeners.
So I'm Miss Pennsylvania's teen now, which means I go compete for Miss America's teen in January in Orlando. But once I compete for nationals, whether I'm Miss America's teen or Miss Pennsylvania's teen, I then go and give up my teen title, and I'll get to go to college and do all of those fun things after I give up my title. But I will forever be a Pennsylvania sister, and one day I'll come back and compete for the Miss program.
That's amazing. Yeah, and we don't have time on this show, but education to me is extremely important. I think I've been in school since I've been a baby. I mean, I went to do three masters, a law degree, PhD in police, but not for myself, just to help, the community. So I wish you amazing luck, but I'm hoping to follow your journey, to success. So thank you. Maybe you could talk now about your inspiration. The reason I was able to locate you, or even, I always say to myself, some nights I don't sleep thinking about how, I miss my mother and I wish we had a cure, and I don't want anyone like your family, your grandfather or you to have to go through this disease anymore. So we need a cure now. But I was on Instagram actually, and maybe we'll get to social media if we have time. And I came across your website, Unshakeable PD, and that's where, when I learn about a new journey, that's what keeps me going. There's days where it's tough and I want to kind of give up because it's, too late for our family. But when I see such incredible movements like you're starting and that you formed, it really inspires me to keep pushing and keep going. So I want to thank you for that. But I want to also dedicate today's talk to your grandfather. So maybe you could tell us a little about him. And I love his pictures. He's a little more beautiful than you. I'm sorry. Maybe you could tell us oh,
My
his name too.
Yeah, my grandfather is one of my best friends. His name is Dave Spurlin, and he is just oh my goodness, he's so amazing. He would do anything for anybody, and he just loves getting to stay active. And when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, I was obviously very little, but I was still able to see how it affected his life and it affected my family's life as he got older and as it progressed. But never once has he let Parkinson's stop him from being a grandfather or being a dad or being a husband. He is always just on his toes, and he knows that the disease is hard, but he's willing to fight for it because he knows that his family surrounding him at all times.
Yeah, and one thing individuals who aren't aware of Parkinson don't realize that it doesn't just affect the individual who's diagnosed. Of course, it does the most, but also the family and the community. And I believe we all have to be a family in this fight for a cure. So really, again, grateful for that. And we send our love to him and your whole family. Let's move a little bit. One of the biggest organizations that came through when we were struggling was the American Parkinson Disease Association. And I think I'm lucky that I have one of these pictures too with the, they always have the stand there at the walk and that, but I love yours because you also are a writer, which is something that I think is very impressive. We're working actually on a book for kids too, but it'll be a little bit more from, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but they want me to do it from my mother's perspective, talking to grandchildren, because there's not much out there. And that's what I liked about your book is it really reaches children too. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, what gave you the idea to write a book and maybe a lot more about the book. And as we talk about that, I do want to share the book so everyone out there listening can also order a copy for themselves.
Absolutely. So I wrote Pop with Parkinson's because growing up, it was really hard for me to understand what Parkinson's disease was, but it was also harder for me because I had my friends asking me, "Hey, what's wrong with your grandfather? Why does he shake? What is this disease?" And I didn't know how to answer that question because I didn't know much about it myself, to the point that I would even avoid my grandfather because I didn't want to hurt him as a child would look at it of a disease. I don't want to hurt that person more. I don't want to catch it because you don't know what it really means. And my sister is now at that age where her friends are starting to ask those questions and kind of say, "Hey, what's going on?" And I never wanted her to be afraid of the disease or to be afraid of our grandfather because he has it. And that goes the same for all children who are struggling with this, who have someone they know that has Parkinson's disease and they aren't really sure what's going on because it can be scary hearing your loved one has a disease. So I wrote Pop with Parkinson's in the perspective of a little girl named Sammy, just explaining that yes, my pop has a disease, but it doesn't mean that he's not my pop anymore. We still do things. It just means that I have to slow down so that he can catch up and keep up with me. But that doesn't mean that it controls his life. It is just a part of his life.
I love that because a lot of individuals who aren't aware, when they do learn about Parkinson's, still might be under some misconceptions. So we know it's not only, an elderly man disease. There is also young onset, like Mr. Michael J. Fox, who I had the honor to meet. But I was shocked when I did about 800 interviews around the world because I didn't realize myself that Parkinson's affects about 1 million people in the US, but 10 million around the world, which was kind of heartbreaking too. But I even interviewed a gentleman in Africa, and they believe that Parkinson's there is witchcraft, and they took away his mother from him and wouldn't let anyone in the village see her. And it was just a tough story, but one again that needs to be out there so that we gain more awareness. So again, I'm really grateful for all that you do. And then this is my favorite logo, a little bit more than Ara, but this is the sign I think for the Instagram account, which we'll get to. Maybe you could talk about, what, inspired you for this logo, and I hope to see this everywhere.
Well, when I was sitting down, I really wanted something that people would remember, and when they would look at it, they would understand what it meant. And the gray ribbon and the tulips are what represent Parkinson's disease, which I think is beautiful because I am a tulip lover myself. So it kind of reminds me that every day when I'm walking through life, that you want to look for those tulips, you want to look for those daily reminders of Parkinson's exists, but it's not something to be afraid of. So when I put tulips on here, I wanted people to be able to see my symbol, but to also know as they're going through life, when they're seeing tulips, that they're reminded of what it stands for. It stands for Parkinson's disease and that we need to know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely jumped out at me, and that's what captured my attention. I'm grateful for seeing it and for social media. Before we get to that, congratulations on your award too. Maybe you could tell us. I don't know if this was a walk or look. I was a bowler. I don't want to say too much. I was. I'll admit it. When my mother used to drag me out of bed on Saturday and Sunday to go bowling in Brooklyn, New York, because it was always snowing. But now today, my arm is no good. So, but I see some bowling pins. Maybe you could talk about, the American Parkinson's Disease Association, maybe what they mean to you and what event this was for.
So I hold a fundraiser called Strike Out for Parkinson's, which is bowling
It's
for the
awesome.
community. And it kind of just brings the community together to help them raise awareness and raise money for, the disease that is very close to my heart. But it also brings the community together so that they understand what they're fighting for or why they're fighting for it. It puts a face to the disease and a story. So they gave me this award when I went to a walk in Connecticut because they had said that I was one of the youngest people they saw fighting for this disease, fighting for those that she loved, and trying to build awareness for it. And they just wanted to say thank you. And I think it's so amazing. I love the American Parkinson's Disease Association because they have really just brought me in with open arms. They saw my story. They heard that I wanted to fight for those with Parkinson's. And they were like, let's do this. Let's do it together. And it was just really amazing because I had no idea what I was doing at first. But they were like, we're going to get you on your feet because you've got something good here.
Are you allowed to share your bowling average, or no? That's uh, that's it's just about the fun. That's the most important part. And I'm in Boca Raton, but South Florida. You're always welcome to join us at our walk. We have one a year. I'm on the committee, but again, I'm really big supporter of that organization. And they were really one of the ones that showed up. When my mother wasn't doing well. Of course, she was not doing well, so she couldn't participate in some of the programs at the point. But just the fact that a representative showed up at our house physically and not just kind of virtually, it was really changed a lot for me forever. And then this is another amazing picture. If you can share with us, Engineering Innovation Lab.
Yeah, I get to go to a lot of places as Miss Pennsylvania's teen, and I get to talk to a lot of people. And one of the big things that I do talk about is Parkinson's disease. Because when I'm talking to children or grown adults, I want them to understand that just because I'm a teenager doesn't mean that my words are insignificant. I have seen something that they may not have seen, and I have learned a lot and taken the time to learn a lot about something. And that would be for me, Parkinson's. So I bring my book with me and I kind of break it down to the children of, yes, I come wearing this shiny crown and this sash that says my title on it, but I'm more than just the shiny crown and the sash. I get to hold a microphone and I get to tell you my story and why it's important. But I also want to hear your stories. And I love that kind of comparison of they get to hear what's going on in my life and they get to know why it's important. But I also get to hear what's going on in their life and I kind of get to see what's going on for them as well.
I mean, you bring something very important to light because, I've interviewed 60 people now through the podcast, but also 800 around the world. But something very important that's not talked about is really the teen population at all. Like, this is the first time you're shedding light on it. I would do more, but I don't really know, so maybe we could do more together in the future. But also children, I have three children, and my mother's favorite time was in blowing bubbles in the backyard with her grandkids, and they were very small. So even today, my oldest is now 11, so she just started middle school, and it's almost kind of she saw some of the signs, and my mother also had delusions and a little hallucinations at the time, which was very tough to explain to a kid. I remember one Sunday we're sitting on my mother's bed. She wasn't doing well, possibly due to the reaction of the medicines, and my mother actually was hugging a cover and saying it was Brooke, which was my daughter, but it wasn't Brooke, it was a cover. And I looked at my daughter, and we didn't giggle or kind of laugh, but we looked at each other like, I don't know how to explain that to my daughter. So through your book and things like that, I think can really help educate. So I think what you're doing is, again, so incredible. And here's one of the areas I want to touch on. Maybe you can talk a little bit. I don't know how much you're allowed, but social media, it's not always the best place, but I think it can be used as a positive platform if we could get rid of the 1% of the kooky, wacky people out there, which, I hope your parents are monitoring, but maybe you could talk about this site because this is the one I want to really not just push, but share around the world and make sure you have 1 million followers very soon. So maybe you could talk a little bit about Instagram and Unshakable PD on your, I'll scroll a little as we go through it.
Absolutely. I love getting to share my story through Instagram, but as you see, I obviously get to share other things as in interesting facts or Parkinson's prevention tips, because just as it is important for people to know my story and know other stories around the world, it's also important for them to know what Parkinson's really is. A lot of people have the stereotype in their head of it's just tremors, but it's really not. It is so much more, and it looks so different for everybody. So I get to use social media to tell people all around the world what Parkinson's really is and to help them get a deeper look on who had it and what did it look like for them. Because it's important for us to know that it doesn't look the same for every person who has it. You can't just assume that if you hear Parkinson's, it immediately means tremors. It could mean so much more. And I love getting to use social media for that.
I also love the uniqueness of a lot of your work. I actually met Alan Alda as a child walking across the street in New York City from a Broadway show. And that point, no one knew, when Parkinson's was. So some of these individuals that you're sharing there is very important. I also wanted to tell everyone to please support Arianna here. We could probably put this link too in the YouTube afterwards when we publish, but Pop with Parkinson's is available. It's very reasonable. My book is more, and I'm sure I don't want to speak for you, but we donate everything just back to the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And it's not easy out there, everyone, to publish. I had to self-publish because it's not enough awareness for Parkinson's disease. So it's really incredible that you have a book so young, and I think it'll be one of so many more. And I commend you on that. Did you have any other areas you want to add on the book or anything else to share?
Everything that we make from the book goes back to the American Parkinson's Disease Association to hopefully get a chapter in Pennsylvania one day.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we're in South Florida, but I think we need one everywhere around the world till we find a cure. Well, I really want to thank you for that. Just a few more areas, because I know you probably have other engagements. You have to keep that crown moving along. I don't want to keep you, but maybe you could talk about some of your future plans and from the Miss Pennsylvania team to graduation. Sounds odd that I'm talking, about I've been to so many graduations for myself. My wife's finishing her degree, and we're talking about graduation. So now let's talk about yours. Maybe you could share some of your plans.
Yeah, so I am a senior this year, which means I will graduate next May. And I'm really excited for that because I get to go to college, but I'm gonna go get a medical degree to be a nurse anesthetist, which means that I can be working with all kinds of patients. And I'm kind of hoping that I get to help in on those surgeries for Parkinson's patients where they get the neurological things put in. But I'm really excited as Miss Pennsylvania's teen. As I mentioned before, we do not have a chapter of the American Parkinson's Disease Association in Pennsylvania. And I think it's really important that we try to raise money for that and try to get one started because my aunt, she lives in Connecticut and she's on the board there. And my grandfather will often travel there. But I think it's really not fair to ask Parkinson's patients to have to travel to other states just to hear just to get awareness or hear that there's other people who are fighting the same battle. So I'm working to get one here in Pennsylvania so that the ones in Pennsylvania know there's a community right here for them. There's a community that wants to back them up and they don't have to go to another state to have one.
Yeah, and we also have so much due to COVID virtual, but it's not the same. I mean, I had the honor to go with my family to New York City, Central Park. You can all join them also, but once a year, the Michael J. Fox has a Unity Walk in Central Park, and it's really a beautiful moment. They raised about $2 million in 4 hours, which was incredible. He showed up too. He's not doing great now, but it's just incredible to always see him. So I wanted to thank you for all that. Now I want to shift to, this is the beauty pageant section. I'm just kidding. But maybe you could tell us just 3 words that might describe who you are. You probably already have answers to plan to. We didn't plan this, everyone, beforehand.
This is definitely a question I do get in interview quite often. And three words that I usually use to describe myself are driven, unique, and outgoing. And I use those words because once I have an idea in my head, I go for it. I'm very determined to get it done. I'm very outgoing and I love talking to people and getting to share my story, but also hear their stories because I think there's so much in the world that needs to be said. But I'm also unique and I love that word because growing up, I thought the word weird was amazing. When people would be like, "Oh my goodness, you're so weird." I'd be like, "Well, thank you. I love that. Thank you so much." So now I like saying I'm very unique. I'm a very bubbly, different kind of person, and I enjoy being different. Because if we were all the same, it would be very boring.
No, I love that answer because I've asked that question to probably 60 people, and you're the first one had such a perfect professional answer. They're all, oh, I don't know. It takes them like a few minutes. Now, this question I wasn't going to ask, but I may as well just do it for fun. But I know you, again, you're a teenager, so I don't know. But is there one moment or one most memorable moment so far that stands out through all of your work with awareness for Parkinson's that you could share? 'Cause I know you're starting out, but you're going to have so many more incredible ones. But is there one?
A moment that really stands out to me is right after I had written my book and I got a hard copy printed, I went over to my grandparents' house and I signed it. And my grandfather had no idea that I had written a book. He had no idea that I was even fighting for awareness for Parkinson's. And I walked in with the book and I sat it down on the table in front of him and I said, "Hey, this is for you." And he kind of looked at me like, "What do you mean? What is this?" And he saw my name on it and he started to cry because he knows that I get to watch his battle and how much it's put our family through, but also him through. And he's just so proud that he gets to say, well, my granddaughter's fighting for something that's not only important to her, but it's going to be important to so many people around the world.
And hopefully this message will also be, shared today through that moment. So thank you for that. Here's one of my favorite questions. Again, I know you're kind of not new to this, but who helps you during times of struggle? Because it's not always easy having a loved one with Parkinson's. And I shed a lot of light mostly on my mother and all those battling, but I always like this question because I was a caregiver, you're a caregiver, your family. Maybe you can also give some tips to caregivers who are listening. So I try to bring out the people behind the scenes. I know your family might be there, and I want to thank them, and we send our love again to them, to the whole family, because this is not just about the loved one who's diagnosed. It's a family in this fight.
Absolutely. Well, I have to give a huge shout out to my parents because they're the ones that explain what Parkinson's was for me. But even to this day, when I'm confused or I just don't understand how someone could be battling with this disease, because it's very hard to comprehend, my parents are always the one to kind of reel me back in and be like, listen, like, it's going to be okay. He's still your grandfather. And a little sentence that we always use that helps me out is that it is not his whole book. It just makes up a chapter of his book, meaning that he still has this life that he gets to live and these memories that he gets to make. Parkinson's just affects how he makes them. But if he doesn't let it control him, then it won't. And I think that's really important for everyone to know is yes, Parkinson's disease will play a part in your life, but it does not have to be your whole life if you don't let it be.
Thanks. And I know you're already doing this, but how do you think we can better promote Parkinson's awareness, not just in Florida and Pennsylvania, but around the world? I think it might be working together and joining with other individuals, but I just was curious on your thoughts.
It's getting those stories out, getting to hear other people's experiences and journeys with Parkinson's disease and getting to share them. That's something that I love getting to do is talking to those with Parkinson's or the caregivers and getting to share their stories as well because one story may not impact the whole world. But if we tell everyone's story, people are going to see just how important it is and just how important it is to acknowledge all of the stories because there are so many people struggling with it.
And do you remember any of the first signs of your grandfather showing that, what opened your eyes to Parkinson's?
Well, I was really little when he was first diagnosed, and I have heard my family say it was really hard for them to understand the diagnosis, but something that really just opened my eyes to, hey, maybe other grandparents don't exactly do this, is my grandfather started to have tremors. And we always say this is a story that he loves to laugh about is I have some little cousins who are like 6, 7 years younger than me. And when they were maybe 4 or 5, they were eating cereal with my grandfather and his hand shake, so he started to spill some of the cereal, but my little cousin started to like mimic him like, "Oh my goodness, look, I'm just like Pop Pop." And he thought it was so funny. but it was also a big realization moment for my family of, "Oh, okay, like, this is noticeable to also the children in the family, then there might be a problem."
Yeah, it's important to share these stories. I actually interviewed Muhammad Ali's one of his daughters, and she told me a story which was incredible. Mr. Ali, towards the end of his life, was struggling and would tear up magazines, and the family in the beginning didn't understand it. They got frustrated, but then one weekend they all decided to sit with him and tear them up together, and he just loved that. And then they started to realize, how important support is. So thanks for that. It means a lot. As we wrap up, this one will be another one that's might be tough because you're just heading to college. But if you were asked to write a script to a movie about your life story, what would you call it? You're just starting out your life, but for the older people like me, what?
I think it would be called A Story That Never Ends, because life is just always going on and things are always going to happen, but your story never really just ends, because even when you are gone, people are going to continue telling your story and continue telling what you did throughout your life, and I think it's so important to remember that everything you do right now, it will be told later in life, and it's important to show people that you used your voice so they can use theirs as well.
I think that should be on a T-shirt now. That's beautiful. Thank you. And if you could leave the Parkinson's community today with some words of encouragement, what would they be?
Just keep going and remembering that you have so many people behind you, even if you don't realize it or maybe it doesn't feel like it. You have a whole community that wants to support you and that loves you. And that Parkinson's disease, do not let it rock you. Do not let it shake you. Stay unshakable.
Thanks. And is there any other areas you wanted to touch on, or how can everyone reach you?
Through social media, following Unshakable PD on Instagram, but also on Facebook. And if you want to follow along on my pageant journey, you can follow Miss Pennsylvania's teen on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Thanks. We have a little message for you, your family, and everyone listening. We love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I, along with Ariana, will advocate for you, and together our voices are so much stronger. And I always say I'm just getting started because, like I told you, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, but every time I see, I mean, something like Unshakable PD, it kind of, I always say that little bunny rabbit, it like re-energizes me and makes me want to keep fighting. So again, I'm so grateful for your time, for all you do, and I hope to be able to follow along with your journey. And just want to thank again your staff, your family, and everyone out there for introducing us. It's just been an honor, a pleasure. And again, everyone listening, please support Ariana, but this can't end here. We have to keep talking about this topic, share it. Just this can't end until we find a cure for her grandfather and for everyone listening. We love you, and we are going to keep fighting. So this has been another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son, George. Please stay tuned. So much more to come. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.